Welcome to part 4 of the Yu-Gi-Oh tutorial. We've gone over a lot of the big ideas around the game and a lot of the big rules. Now we're going to go to the individual rules, a lot of the smaller but often repeated key terms that you run into while you're playing the game. While I can't hit every single key term, I will hit the ones used most often. Also, if there are other terms that you wish to know more about, please feel free to comment or send me a message and I'll answer it to the fullest of my ability. Tokens. Token monsters are monsters created through a card effect. They count as a creature with their own stats, effects, names, and terms. However, they are tokens. They do not count as actual cards. They do, however, count as monsters and are part of the 5 monster max count. Token monsters, unless otherwise noted, can be used for tribute summons, for synchro summons, for fusion summons, and for ritual summons like any other monster. A token monster cannot be flipped face down, but any other effects of that card will be fulfilled as much as possible. A token monster also cannot be used as Xyz summons material because they do not become material. Reason is, the overarching rule of a token is if it's removed from the field, it disappears. A token, when destroyed, bounce to hand, bounce to deck. When it leaves the field, it disappears. It no longer exists as a thing. Banish. Banish is the key term used to denote that a card is being removed from play. Like with most card games, there is a hand, a field, and a graveyard, but there's also an area known as removed from play. You treat this like you would any other field area. However, it does not count as being in your graveyard, deck, or such. It is, as it says, removed from play. If anything says that it banishes a target, then it is simply removed from play. That includes if something's taken from the field and immediately removed from play. It never does touch the graveyard. Therefore, any graveyard effects do not occur because it does not touch the graveyard. Discard. Discard means a card is put from your hand to the graveyard or removed from play depending on the card's effect. Flip and flipped face up. Some cards will say flip on them and then an effect. These are flip effect monsters. They activate when they are face down and the card is flipped face up either through a spell effect, the player flipping it themselves, or the card being attacked. When a card that is face down is attacked, it flips face up to check defense and check for effect resolutions. When that monster is destroyed, the flip effect is still on the stack and will still occur. Flipped face up means that the card is flipped face up for any reason, and is different from a flip effect. Flip summoning as well is when you take a card that's face down and flip it face up. Effects that specifically denote flip summons do not activate if a card that is face down is attacked by another opponent's creature because it's flipped up during damage calculation and is not flipped up via a flip summon. Destroy. Destroy is about what you would think it is. A creature or a spell or something on the field is destroyed, which means you then place it in the graveyard. Target. Targeting is when you choose one or more specific cards on the field for some sort of ability. Equip spells are targeting spells because you have to choose something to equip it to. Other spells will say that you have to target a monster for an effect, and that is usually something that happens on activation, and during resolution sometimes that monster or spell may not be there any longer and the effect will fizzle because the target is no longer there. Target is when you choose, not when something happens in reaction to, unless specifically noted on the card such as SAKURETSU armor. Draw. Draw is when you draw a card or cards based on effects or in the draw step. Search. There aren't many times that you actually find the word search on cards, but there are also times where you find effects that say that you cannot search for specific cards. Search is more of a generally used term to talk about cards that will search your deck or hand or graveyard for specific types of cards and add them to your hand or put them on the field. Searching is basically any effect where you target a card or cards in your deck or graveyard and put them in your hand, on the field, in the graveyard, remove from play. It is when you have specific cards that you're allowed to find. Tribute. Now, tribute summoning is a form of normal summoning where you tribute monsters on the field in order to summon larger monsters. However, tribute as an effect means that the card is tributed for that effect. How this differs is tributing does not count as removing from play, does not count as destroying. It is tributing. Therefore, cards that work off of creatures being tributed do work with this. However, there are very specific ways where this can be worked around other effects. Let's take the Blue Eyes Toon Dragon, for instance, or any other Toon monster. Toon monsters say that they can be special summoned when you tribute monsters. This does not count as a tribute summon. Therefore, something like a Scapegoat, where it says that these monsters cannot be tribute summoned. You can use those tokens, however, for the Toon Blue Eyes because you're tributing for the special effect of the Blue Eyes to special summon it. Xyz Material. A card that is underneath an Xyz monster is an Xyz material. They do not count as being on the field. They also do not count as being sent to the graveyard when you put them in the graveyard to activate the effect of an Xyz monster. When you detach an Xyz material from an Xyz monster and put it in the graveyard, then you are simply putting that card from whatever mysterious area it is, because it doesn't count as being on the field, and it's put in the graveyard. There are very, very, very few instances where an effect activates when it's sent to the graveyard in such a manner, but they do exist. However, most of the time, there's no effect that occurs because they are not sent to the graveyard, they are not sent from the field to the graveyard, they are simply magically in the graveyard all of a sudden. Cost. Cost is now denoted by a semicolon after the cost, so pay 1,000 life points, semicolon, the rest of the effect. Cost is something that you pay on activation and does not affect resolution. When you activate the card, you have to pay the cost in order to be able to activate that card. When, or a colon. When the first sentence of a card or a sentence in a card ends in a colon, that denotes when you may activate that card. So, when an opponent's monster attacks, colon, you may only activate that card when that specific event occurs. Once per turn. Effects that say once per turn mean that once during your turn, you may activate that effect on the card once. Unless a card specifically notes that it can be activated during either player's turn or once during your opponent's turn. Any once per turn card means that it's once during your turn. I will share one last bit of wisdom before I end the tutorials and start moving on to my next series that I'm going to do with Yu-Gi-Oh! And that is, whenever you build a deck or start using cards, always check online. Usually Yu-Gi-Oh! Wikia is a really good site for this, to check for the newest version of that card. As cards come out, they are printed differently. Erratas are issued on different cards, and different cards and effects work in different ways. Best example, I'll go back to SAKURETSU Armor. SAKURETSU Armor originally did not target. When you were attacked, you activated it in response and it destroyed whatever creature was attacking. It was not targeting because you had no say over what was attacking you. Now, however, SAKURETSU Armor and Dimensional Prison are termed as targeting cards, and the card is reprinted as such. Especially if you have older cards, check newer printings of them to see if something has changed on the card or with the rulings of those cards.